Okay, here's my newest toy, another console stereo, a 1960 Motorola that I picked up at the flea market for 25 bucks. Unfortunately, some dodo painted the cabinet brown on this thing, and from what I can tell, these cabinets were photo finished. And as much as I don't like repainting things, about the only option I know is to strip all the brown crap off and paint the thing in some color that I like, because there's really not much you can do with photo finish. And as you can see, I already have it half apart here. Here's the control panel. We have a selector switch for stereo, mono, volume, bass, treble, and balance. And here's our record storage compartment. Now, there was an optional tuner you could purchase to fit into the record storage area, and someday I hope to find one of those tuners so I can turn this into an AM/FM phono unit instead of just a phonograph. Here's the record changer, which is something that kind of surprised me, because every Motorola console that I've seen had a VM changer in it. This is a BSR Monarch, which I believe is a UA8 changer. And of course, it's all gummed up. The speed selector knob is lever stuck, and all this is out of whack. This thing uses a Sonotone 8T stereo cartridge, which I'm sure is shot. Checked the tracking force on the tone arm, and it clocks in at around 18 grams. Yeah, you heard me right, 18 grams. Which that's a far cry from the 5 to 6 grams that this is supposed to track. So either the tension spring under here has lost its tension, or either someone's been playing with it, but that will definitely have to be fixed. Now, this is one of those 3-channel Motorola's. We have a 12-inch speaker in the center for our bass, and then we have speakers on the left and right for our mid-range and treble. Now we'll take a look at the back side. Okay, here's the inside. Lighting's not the best, but we have our mid-range and treble speakers here. We have the exact same speakers on the other side, and you can't see it, but there's the big 12-inch bass speaker there in the center. Here's our amplifier, 3-channel amp. We have a 6BM8 for the left channel, another 6BM8 for the right channel, and a 6BQ5 driving the center bass speaker, and I think a couple of 12AX7s for preamp tubes. And I believe this is probably a 6CA4 rectifier, I'm not sure, but all the output tubes appear to be Muller manufactured tubes, so that's a plus. Now I'm getting ready to pull the amp out to give it a good overhaul. I plan on restoring this unit. First we have to, well, actually we've done the first thing by disconnecting the turntable and the cable that goes up to the control panel up here. Now we have to disconnect the speaker leads, which solder onto the transformers. They do not unplug. So I'm going to have to unsolder each lead, and I've already made a diagram of where everything goes. That way when I get ready to put it all back together, there won't be any confusion. Okay, here's the amp removed from the set, and we have our speaker wires marked with heat shrink tubing, so I'll get the polarity correct when I hook them back up. And here's our little diagram we made, and the little black dots on the diagram denote the heat shrinked portion of the lead. And here's our cable that goes to the cabinetry lighting. And when you unplug one of these cables, you don't want to just pull it out by the wire. That could possibly break the wire. Instead, you just want to take a small screwdriver and stick it down in between the plug and the chassis itself and gently pry it out, very gently, because you also don't want to break the connector either. Okay, let's take the amp down to the workbench and give it the once over. Okay, here's the amp. and before we get too deep into this, we want to check the power transformer and make sure it's still good. And the best way to do that is to remove the rectifier tube, apply power, and check the AC voltage output of the transformer while making sure nothing smokes or burns or stinks or does anything else it's not supposed to. And if all that's good, then we will ohm out the primary and secondary windings of all three of these audio output transformers. And if they're good, then I'll feel safe about proceeding. Here's the underside of the amplifier. As you can see, most of the capacitors are of the ceramic disc type, and these rarely ever go bad. I didn't say they never go bad, I just said they rarely ever go bad. And I only replace them when they go bad. Here are two electrolytic capacitors, which I would guess are probably cathode bypass caps for the output tubes, but I'll confirm that in just a minute. And here's our multi-section filter capacitor, which I'll probably go ahead and replace that for good measure. And this amplifier is fuse protected, which is something that's kind of rare on these units. Most of this old stuff was not fuse protected. And as a result, if something shorts, then usually your power transformer goes up in smoke. But since this has a fuse on it, the chances of that happening are less likely. And this old power cord is kind of hard and crusty in some places, so I'll replace that while I'm in here. And I'll also test the tubes and make sure they're all good. And I'm testing the final tube, the 6CA4 rectifier, on the little B&K tube tester. And everything's good to go. In fact, the only dead tube I found was the 6BQ5 that drives the center base channel. The filament was okay, but the emission is dead as a doornail. But that's not a huge problem. I should have plenty of these around here. So now I think the next order of business is to apply power to the transformer and make sure it's putting out the right voltage and nothing abnormal is happening with that. Okay, the power transformer has passed the test. We have around 500 volts across the high voltage winding, which is probably about right. And we have almost 7 volts coming off of the filament winding, which is about right considering there's no load on the transformer. And nothing stinks or smokes or flares up or anything like that, so the power transformer is okay. Now we will ohm out the resistance, the windings of the output transformers, and if they're okay, then we can proceed with this. Okay, the secondary windings are okay, which that's the windings that connect to the speakers. Now we'll flip it over and check the primary windings, make sure they're okay. And those are usually the windings that are bad on these when something goes wrong, so let's keep our fingers crossed. Well, I have great news. All of the output transformers seem to be good, so this project is a go as far as I'm concerned. I'll replace those electrolytic capacitors. I'll check the resistors to make sure they're in tolerance. And I'll put a nice flexible power cord on here to replace the one that's getting kind of crusty. And of course replace the dead output tube, and then our amp should be in business. Okay, this concludes part 1 of this video. The next part of the video, next part of this series, we'll work on the amp and then continue from there. Okay, thanks for watching, and more to come very soon.